What's going on, everybody? Sharpie360 here, and today I want to talk about arguably one of the most anticipated games remakes of all time. That's right, I'm talking about the legendary game, the legendary remake, Silent Hill HD. That's right, I'm talking about Final Fantasy VII. Almost 25 years later, and one of my childhood dreams that was never realized at the time is finally coming true. Final Fantasy VII was easily one of my favorite games as a kid, and in many ways has influenced and shaped the style and genre of games I play on a regular basis to this day. Now, as a young lad, I was seated on Team Nintendo with some of my all-time faves like Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, Super Mario 64, and Banjo-Kazooie, to name a few, and then later graduating to Nintendo GameCube. It wasn't until well into the years of PlayStation 2 that I decided to switch over to the dark side and pick one up. My first encounters with Final Fantasy VII began soon after, and I was hooked like a fish to say the least. I had never heard of a game being so large it required 3 discs, even for the technology at that time period. Being a level and turn-based RPG, unlike the action-adventure styles of the games I'd been used to, I was definitely intrigued by it. At that point in my life, I was in high school and ADHD was in full effect, so I don't think I ever beat the original game back then. Shocking. But to be fair, it was one of those games where if you didn't meticulously pay attention to every detail and play consistently, you'd be lost in no time. At least I was. But I still loved every second of it. So you can probably imagine I was pretty stoked when I heard that after all these years a remake was actually going to be released. Now it was only a matter of time until the dream became a reality. So, what is Final Fantasy VII, and why is the remake such a big deal? Final Fantasy VII was a revolutionary game in many ways, and some people hold it in regards as high as the grandfather of all modern RPGs, while others were mildly unimpressed. Whether you loved it, or you hated it, or you could give two shits about it, the game was definitely iconic and has forever left its mark on video game culture and history. Released back on PlayStation in 1997 as a 3-disc game, it quickly made a name for itself, partially due to the already large fan base of Final Fantasy franchise and to newcomers to the series and genre alike. Utilizing the new and rapidly growing 3D technology, it was pushing countless boundaries, and for a lot of players it was considered a massive milestone for the RPG genre as a whole. If you ask anyone that is a fan of the role-playing genre to list the top 5 RPGs of all time, you can bet that Final Fantasy VII would make it onto that list. Quite simply, the game is considered by many to be the best game ever released on PlayStation 1. Although that is, of course, subjective somewhat. Sony knew this and used this knowledge as marketing ammo for the upcoming release of the new PlayStation 3. In 2005, leading up to the launch of the PlayStation 3, Sony and Square Enix teased at the existence in the near future for a Final Fantasy VII remake, but the tech demo was really only intended to showcase the graphical capability of the new console generation. And honestly, even though the graphics looked light years ahead of what was currently available on consoles at the time, I'm glad that they waited until they did. In 2020, Square Enix and Division 1 released the first part of the trilogy remake of the epic saga for PlayStation 4. A year later, the enhanced version known as Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade was released for PlayStation 5 and Windows, touting even more polished graphics and gameplay. Even though Steam didn't release it until another year after, it was definitely worth the wait. And unfortunately, Xbox has yet to see the release of this title, which I don't know why they would release it on Windows but not Xbox, but hey, not my call. Staying honorably true to the lore of the original story, you start off as Cloud Strife, an ex-soldier that reluctantly joins up with the eco-terrorist group Avalanche to try and take down the evil mega-corporation known as the Shinra Corporation, who is harvesting the planet's lifeblood known as Mako. On top of that, Cloud has his own demons that he is facing due to a byproduct of the mutations performed on the Shinra soldiers. Initially hoping to skip town and begin a nameless life far away, he now finds himself at the forefront of a domestic eco-war. Wait, hold up. Eco-War? Man, that sounds lame as hell. Are you sure you're still watching the right video? You better check that subscribe button to make sure it's great. Oh, and the bell, make sure you set that little beauty to all. Alright, most notably for Cloud is the game's main antagonist, Sephiroth, another Shinra soldier who died during a battle against Cloud in the past and now haunts Cloud's memories, waiting to be reborn and take over the world. Well, if you want to know more about the backstory with Final Fantasy VII and all the lore, there's a great video that I will link in the description, and it goes through all the backstory and kind of explains everything that's gone up until the point of where we're at now with this game, and then what happens with the future events and whatnot. So link in the description if you want to check that out. So the game picks up right when Cloud gets unwillingly recruited to Avalanche, and they make their way to the Sector 7 reactor to destroy it. Now, enough backstory, let's get into the game.
Any last words?
There! My turn! All set! No more!
Here it comes. Let's finish this.
Don't stop till it's done!
Gotcha.
Square Enix has definitely pulled out all the stops for this one. Look how polished, how pristine, how absolutely boring this game is at times. But I gotta hand it to them. When they set out to make a remake of a colossal icon, they certainly know how to deliver, even if it takes them 17 years to do so. Come on. Well, what are you supposed to do? Anyways, taking a classic and bringing it into the modern era is no simple task. The pace of the original game was slow and clunky, with the battles taking minutes or even longer. This time around, thanks to the new combat system, the battles are fast-paced and for the most part, non-stop action, although still clunky here and there. Being the biggest change, the fluid open action combat system is a major highlight for the remake. Whereas the original game was the dreaded turn-based system, this approach breathes excitement and energy into each encounter. Additionally, it gives you all the freedom you need to move around the battlefield, allowing you to strategically position yourself for the next critical blow, dodge enemy attacks, or even flee from the battle altogether. Much like in the original game and the previous installments of Final Fantasy, there is a limit break system that can be used to unleash a wide variety of powerful moves, such as special attacks, buff and debuff support, and also healing. Characters take damage over the course of a battle, building up their limit gauge, and when it becomes full, they can execute it. ATB bars, or active time battle abilities, are character-specific movesets that can be performed in addition to basic attack commands. Which action is available to use is also dependent on how many ATB bars your character has filled. For example, Cloud can use a move called Braver, a massive downward swinging sword attack that inflicts major damage. Tifa can use Unbridled Strength, which will raise her attack level temporarily. Unlike normal attacks, however, these require the use of at least one ATB bar to perform. These ATB bars build up over time from attacking and moving around, basically staying active during battle. Each character has a total of 6 abilities that their wielder can learn by performing them enough times. Each weapon has its own unique ability and once learned can be performed regardless of the weapon that is currently equipped. Abilities aren't the only thing dictated by the ATB bars either. In fact, in order to use items, cast magic, or even call a summon requires the use of at least one ATB bar, with higher output actions requiring the use of both ATB bars to perform. Some abilities are better than others, but each one is useful in its own way. It also comes down to which one you think looks the coolest to use. Overall, the combat feels very smooth and enjoyable for the majority of the time, with this new hybrid combat system combining the best elements of modern open battle and classic turn-based combat into one, and the ability to switch between your party members at will, as well as command them remotely, makes for some very interesting and downright awesome battle dynamics. The game has a lock-on system that honestly needs a little work. It's definitely helpful for when you're facing 1 or 2 foes, but when facing hordes of enemies, sometimes up to 20 or 30 at once, the lock-on system can just end up bouncing around to random targets, causing it to be more of a hindrance than helpful, especially when you're trying to tank one specific enemy in that horde. As far as the control scheme, both controller and mouse and keyboard are pretty standard. The game implements a sort of quick action system that you can use to quickly perform different character abilities or use magic or items. These can all be mapped to whatever action you want. The overall handling was kind of wonky at times, especially when trying to turn around or make a sharp corner. The time it takes to get up to speed from a standstill doesn't seem all that drastic at first, but when approaching that 50-hour mark, it starts to become exceptionally annoying at times. On top of that, the out-of-combat single sword attack animation gets painful to wait for as well. I played on the controller for the majority of the time, mainly because pinpoint accuracy wasn't a huge priority for this game. Everyone loves a good leveling system, am I right? grinding away at XP for hours on end, fighting battle after battle just to get to the next level and up your stats by what you think is substantial, but in reality is actually quite trivial. Rinse and repeat, boys. Rinse and repeat. Arbitrary numbers are fun, right? Actually, the leveling system is quite nice. I felt that it was fairly balanced throughout my entire playthrough, and I never really found myself stuck at any specific point needing to grind out an extra handful of levels to progress past it. This was by all means a warm welcome in comparison to some of the other Final Fantasy titles that are straight grind fests. And even though I only finished out my playthrough at level 43 or so across the party, my new game plus chapter select hardcore mode made getting to level 50 cap a breeze. Characters will gain XP from defeating enemies, and with each level gained, the character's max HP or hit points and max MP or mana points increase, and 2 additional experience point types are gained as well. First off, we have ability points or AP, which are used for leveling materia, which happens automatically when you use its ability. Upgraded materia becomes progressively more powerful and effective with each level gain, unlocking new spells and abilities in the higher tiers. Second, we gain skill points, or SP. These are used to upgrade your weapon subcores. Each weapon has between 6 and 4 subcores, all with 4 to 6 of their own skill nodes that can be upgraded. These skill nodes can increase stats such as attack, magic, defense, HP, and MP, all the way to unlocking new materia slots on the weapon itself. Unfortunately, these stat boosts are only applied when the weapon is actively being used, but your acquired SP gets distributed evenly to each weapon on hand regardless. These leveling systems give you a very cool way to build out each character to your liking. I wouldn't go as far as to say it's a fully customizable system with total freedom. Each character has their predefined role in the party, so to speak. So when you get to level 50 and everything is upgraded, regardless of how and when you upgraded it, just remember, it's the journey, not the destination. All this in addition to the materia system, which provides the ability to use magic, support, and healing spells, as well as buff and debuff abilities, plus much more, makes the leveling system feel very fluid, solid, and customizable all at once while in the thralls of training each character. Even though, as I just previously stated, the destination is still always the same. There's also summon materia for calling upon massive monsters to help your party out in battle for a limited time and ending their summon with a devastating final attack. Summons are a staple of the Final Fantasy games, and most of the time they're just referred to as such, but I prefer the name Aeon or Esper. Whatever you call them, they're always accompanied by stunning displays of visual graphics when they get summoned or unleash their final attack. Speaking of stunning displays of visual graphics, if you have ever played a Final Fantasy game before, or any Square Enix for that matter, you're probably aware of just how much emphasis they put on the graphical detail. If nothing else, visually, they're always at the forefront and pushing boundaries with each release, and this remake is definitely no exception. The character models are very crisp, polished, and for lack of a better term, downright beautiful. Cloud in particular is done exceptionally well, and personally this version of him is my favorite by far. Tifa, Barret, and Aerith are also damn near perfectly executed as well. Aerith in particular being that up until this point her screen time in the world beyond simple polygons has been fractional at best. And yes, her name is Aerith, not Aerith like it was inaccurately depicted in the North America release of the original game. Midgar and the surrounding environments of the city feel colossal. Square Enix does a fantastic job of capturing the massive scale and the aesthetic of Midgar, from the gritty, dirty underbelly of the slums to the most extravagant and lavish corporate suites of the Shinra HQ. It definitely feels like you're truly entangled within it. Battle animations are nothing short of a visual masterpiece, with moves that look and feel phenomenal when you land a massive blow. The limit breaks and special abilities of both friend and foe alike are some of the most visually satisfying animation sets I've come across in an RPG since the last Final Fantasy game I played, which was 15, aka the Band Boy edition. Even during the most intense and action-packed moments, Square Enix does a great job of perfectly riding that fine line between cinematic wonder and overwhelming noise. When it comes to the battle and the end of the game, it really leaves you wondering how in the world are they going to top themselves with their next release. That being said, the game is nowhere near perfect, and nor does it claim to be. Some of the character animations, especially in the open world, are kinda awkward. I already mentioned the begin running and single sword swing animations, but at times, the movement felt something more reminiscent of GTA 3, which was only amplified in the tighter areas of the map. There are also more instances of stuff like this happening throughout my playthrough as well. And while we're at it, what's with the choke points? Can we figure out a way to better preload the next areas of the map without needing to take 5 seconds to crawl under, over, or through a small patch of debris that serves no purpose other than to hurry up and wait? If load screens are gone, choke points should be as well. The game itself has very limited graphics settings, unfortunately, and the customization available for those settings is pretty sparse. Taking a look at the graphics screen, you can see just how limited we are in making adjustments. Two of the primary settings are texture quality and shadow quality. Both have options for either high or low. Even though the majority of this game looks absolutely phenomenal, the background and fill textures could use some work. Going up close to a wall or passive object really shows how low quality some of these textures are, resembling something more reminiscent of what you would have seen on the PlayStation 3 demo. You can also adjust the amount of NPCs being drawn in the area you occupy, which can help if you're running on a rig that might be a little bit out of date. You can also adjust the frame rate between 30, 60, and 90, but I've found personally that the jump from 60 to 90 doesn't make all that much difference. One of the biggest issues I've come across is having huge frame drops in certain areas. It's only happened a handful of times for me, but when it does, I'm sitting at a hefty 4 frames per second and the game is basically unresponsive and unplayable. To be fair, this may be more of a programming issue, being that Square Enix has had notoriously bad ports of their games in the past, or it may just be my shitty Bluetooth connection on my controller. Overall, the game looks pretty damn good though, where it needs to and when it needs to. If we just take a second and acknowledge the music is nothing short of spectacular in this game. The remake has taken all of the original scores and bringing them out of the age of MIDI and into the realm of beautiful symphony, electronica, and organic sound. The game's score has won multiple awards, including Game Awards 2020 Best Score in Music. The game has 31 music discs throughout the game to collect, all of which are compositions from the classic game and the remake. The story is very true to the original game and has been widely praised for this achievement. There has also been some additional content added into the story that helps to add to the open world sense of the game, even though the first part is actually, in fact, quite linear. You get a couple of areas in the game where you have a number of side quests to do that you can get some XP for, mostly helping the townsfolk around different sectors, different slums you progress through, while rewarding you with helpful gear and experience, as well as allowing some of the quest lines to progress further into the game, rewarding even more valuable gear later on down the road. The game offers a handful of combat arenas to test your battle skills and mini-games such as Whack-A-Crate and cardio competitions to partake in as well, all of which offer rare and useful equipment as rewards. The character development through the game was interesting and well portrayed. Right from the get-go, we meet Cloud as a cold, arrogant, and selfish man that only has one thing in mind: getting paid and getting gone. Being that we only had text-to-speech to go off of in the time of the original game, the tone wasn't always the easiest to follow, but personally, I feel like they did a great job depicting him in the manner that they did in the modern era. And if anybody out there has seen Final Fantasy VII Advent Children, you know they've stayed consistent with his character. Honestly, it goes for all the characters, especially Sephiroth and Barret. Speaking of Barret, his voice actor and character as a whole absolutely knocked it out of the park. He provided so much depth and entertainment throughout the whole game that I could totally see Barret being the main character someday. Full of passion, energy, and testosterone, he definitely makes fighting side by side with him a hell of an experience. The interactions between Barret and Marlene during their subplot almost brought me to tears a few times. Now that's how it's done. The chemistry between Cloud and Tifa is also explained very well, giving you snippets and pieces of their broken past to where she is now, while also giving you plenty of room to fill in the empty space in their timeline. The whole crew soon becomes very cohesive and effective, giving them the edge they need to beat Shinra. Again, if you want to watch a more in-depth video about the backstory of Final Fantasy VII, you can check out the video in the description. Now, being an avid Final Fantasy fan, I'm not naive to how long-winded some of the game's narratives can be, and this game is definitely no exception. When sitting through some of these cutscenes and just dialogue moments in general, I sometimes couldn't remember if I was playing a video game or watching a soap opera. It can feel like the game is made up of 10% gameplay and battles and 90% dialogue and cutscenes. The writing at times isn't the best, and sometimes the context of what's being said doesn't exactly fit the situation the characters are in. I understand the first language of this game is Japanese, but good lord, I wouldn't have missed a few lines or scenes being cut from the English version. Seriously, it would feel like I just want to turn the game off because I can wait for the next episode next week. And yes, we have all seen the infamous line from Cloud telling Jessie during her last moments on
Gaia.
You owe me a pizza.
We could.
Yeah. You owe me a pizza.
That's right. I do.
The jokes just don't land on their feet most of the time. Don't get me wrong, the additional dialogue can really drive some parts of the story, but it can also hinder the momentum of it as well. One last thing, this is what I don't understand. The concept of death and injury is so strange in these games. Like, how can someone get hurt when every general store in the city has a potion for sale? How can someone die when a tuft of Phoenix Down is just around the corner? And before you say anything, I get that Phoenix Downs just revive knocked out players, okay? Not bring them back from the dead. Anyways, going back to that whole Jessie scene quickly, why did she have to die? Why did Biggs have to die? Why did the innocent people of the slums that just collapsed thanks to Shinra have to die? When Cloud and the crew can survive onslaught after onslaught of sword slashes, gunshots, magic damage, and every other Final Fantasy related cause of death imaginable, they should have just carried Jessie to the nearest healing bench. Duh. Now, trying to keep spoilers to a minimum, at some point in the story you get to the point of no return. We get to go to Shinra HQ, road trip. For the most part, not much changes other than you get a fancy new gadget to zip around with. We spend a lot of time building up and not actually accomplishing much to get to the top of the Shinra Tower, and let's just say if you make the wrong choice in getting there,
There are stairs. So many stairs.
I'm never taking stairs again. Never done to do it. No, really, it was like 76 flights of stairs that we climbed, and halfway up you just crawled to a halt. My dumbass thinking, hey, there's gotta be an achievement for taking the stairs. Well, a simple Google search would have saved me 20 minutes of that nightmare. No, there was no achievement. Anyways, you go there and do the things and the stuffs, then you're on the roof fighting, then you're fighting on the road, and then you're fighting in the air, and then you're fighting in a giant maelstrom, and then you're fighting in a different dimension, and then boom! Overall, Final Fantasy VII Remake has proven to live up to it and in many ways exceed exactly what it was hyped to be. A revamp of a beloved story with great character development, an absolute awesome battle and leveling system, modern day graphics and audio, and dedication to the original canon. The game isn't perfect, but then again, what game is these days? And I'm definitely looking forward to what lies next and how the bar gets pushed even further in the second and third installment of this epic trilogy. In numbers speak, I'd give this game about a 7.75 out of 10. But hey, that might just be my fan bias talking, or it just might be that good or bad. Take it as you will. Then again, I just started playing Strangers of Paradise Final Fantasy Origins. Ouch. Anyways, that's my take on it. Let me know what you think about the remake in the comments section. If you like this video, make sure to give it a like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one. Sharp out.
Gaia.